Hi everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. So, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to whichever part of the world you're listening to. Today, we are going to continue with our data science journey. So, first of all, before I start with, I wanted to ask if anyone has questions from the last sessions. We have covered up till now basics of
Yes, sir.
Python,
I have a
pandas,
question, sir.
NumPy. Do you have a question? Yes.
Yes, sir.
You can ask now.
वो वायरस वाला डेटा है नोटबुक पे जाए आप मैं आपको बताता हूँ सर
जी जी बताएं.
नोटबुक पे जाए सर
जी
वायरस
नोटबुक
वाला
Notebook has been uploaded on the GitHub sessions. I will share the link. So, since nobody has any questions from the last session, so we will continue on today. So basically today we are going to kick off a journey in data science. Up till now, what we were doing was all revision, Python ka, everything we did for pandas, NumPy. And today is the day which we will start officially with started working on the real life data set. So those who don't know me, I am Nabeel Ahmed, and I will be today your instructor for this Titanic data analysis. I'm a founder, co-founder at Gradient, and I love to bring insights out of the data. So, what we all think data scientists would be doing? We all think that as a data scientist, we will be working like this. But what actually we do is we import libraries, and there is a simple pattern we follow in analyzing our data and building models. Today, we are going to see exactly how we can work on a real life data set, what's the process behind it, how we have to start, and how his entire process works. So basically, whenever you want to start a problem, you just can't go and just start with working the data. You first need to have a business understanding. Problem case आपको पता होना चाहिए. You should know what kind of problem you're working on. For example, let's suppose I give you an example. There is a bank and they wants to know how many fraudulent transactions happen. So that's a problem you had to figure it out. How many fraudulent transactions happen in a particular period of time. So that's a statement you know. And then you have the data regarding it. Maybe you have a lot of transactions happening in a particular period of time, people transacting and age, gender, all their features you have. And then you go complete this entire cycle. Today, our focus will be till here, data preparation. We'll understand the business problem, we will understand the data, and we'll try to prepare it so that in the next sessions, we will try to model it as well. So this journey, you can see, this is called Chris DM cycle. As a data scientist, you are supposed to follow the entire journey. So you can see there are ingoing and outgoing arrows, which means that once you know the problem, it happens most of the time that you have to go again to data understanding and then back and forth. If you go Google it right now, you can see 70% of time is spent on this data preparation part. So you must be wondering, we haven't done a modeling till yet, we haven't done any algorithms yet. So, and that's because 70% time is consumed by these three steps, and only 30% of time is spent on modeling. Because if you don't prepare your data properly, then the model will be just useless, right? So let's see what today we'll focus is on. So today our focus is on exploratory data analysis and data preparation. We will obviously go through this objective, then data requirement, and obviously this part is already been will not cover because we already will have the data, and then modeling, evaluation, and deploying. So let's see first why it is important to prepare the data. So you can see this is a pie chart which shows that 79% of time is spent on this cleaning and organizing and collecting of data sets. Be it in any field, financial की field हो गई, business की field हो गई, आपको जब भी data collect करना होगा, so you will have to prepare it. You will have many instances के people would have left it what you can say null values. They don't fill those fields. So as a data scientist, it's your responsibility to cater those values and eliminate those values from your data set and make it clean so that when you process it, pre-process it and model it, so it will have a fine model which can do predictions. Okay. So what is data preparation? Data preparation is the process of collecting data from several usually disparate data sources and then profiling, cleaning, and enriching, and combining those into a derived data set for use in an analytic process. So we will see how we'll do this. So this is very important. Garbage in, garbage out. If you don't clean the data and you just give your model that unclean data, so what do you expect it to perform? It will perform very poorly because you are just giving in garbage in and it will go garbage out. The models are supposed to be very specific what you want to like make learn. For example, suppose you are given a task, you are a data scientist, you are hired by some company and you are given a task to, for example, predict a rainfall. You are hired by meteorological department, you want to predict when rainfall will occur in particular cities in Karachi or in Pakistan. So you have to provide a particular type of data, a time series data. Like in particular time, this is what temperature is, humidity, pressure. These are all the factors you have to include in a data set. And then having said that, you also have to cater if there are any missing values. So we will all deal with this slowly, gradually, but I'm just telling you that if you don't deal the data, then the garbage out will come. The model will not perform as expected. So in business problem, where you are working for an enterprise company, so if you don't clean the data, then poor decisions cost a lot. They spend a lot of time on data gathering, and if you don't make the quality data, then you will not end up anywhere. So yeah. So let's see how to understand the data first. Understand your data from the perspective of solving the business problem. इससे ऐसा नहीं हो सकता कि you have the data and you just say कि I will do something from it. You need to know the purpose, what you want to do, like what model you want to make. You want to make a food prediction model. You want to make a model which can predict cancers. You want to make a model which can tell how successful you will be in future. You have to have a relevant data first. And also, side note, not all data fields are relevant. You have to figure it out which data is important for a particular task. So separating data from the noise, that's what here means noise data. There will be data which will be not required for that particular problem, and you have to be vigilant about that what kind of data you're using. So to do a shift, you can read all this columns vagera, using all the columns could cause discrimination, gender, geolocation, economic, etc. So now see how to access the data quality. A quick summary of the data can reveal which type of data we are dealing with, missing values, outlier detection, duplicates. These are all some of the common errors we found in like real-life data sets. So in today, what data I've gathered for this session is Titanic data. We all know about Titanic, and now is the right time to like jump on the Kaggle site, which eventually you will be performing competition here. So basically, you have to first sign up here, and then you can see a data section here. It will tell you exactly the problem statement we'll be working on. So you can see the data set had training set, estimate test set, and then there is a complete, you can say a table definition about all the variables we'll be using. Until now, what we were doing, हमने पहले class sessions में देखा था, we were just working on the data set without understanding it, and that was wrong. Not wrong, but because the purpose of those sessions wasn't data analysis. It was to teach you about pandas, numpy. But today, as we are officially starting to understand the data, it's very important to know what each field means. So for example, it says here survival. It's a field, and it says iski column mein agar zero, if there's a zero in this column, that means no, a person hasn't survived. If there is a one in that column, that means a person has survived. Similarly, it's a P class. I don't know what P class is, so I can just check what it means. It says ticket class. Maybe there will be different sections, like in train, there's a section A class, B class. So you can see one for first class, two for second class, and so on and so forth. Similarly, gender, male, female, or other, we don't know. We'll see how data is arranged. Similarly, age groups, age in years. We will analyze how each column is helping us to draw different insights of data. And we are supposed to do that as a data scientist. All right. So you can read all the variables here. I can just give a quick summary. SIB, SP, number of siblings you have or spouses aboard, a part, number of parents, children aboard the Titanic, ticket number, fare, cabin number, and embarked. Embarked is a categorical variable. We will study on this as well.
Sir, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sir, are these predefined variables or we define them by ourselves?
So the one who has collected the data, that person has provided with the complete table. That in my data, which I'm providing you. So suppose you are a data scientist and you are hired by a company, and the company has provided you this data, this entire data sets, this train.csv and this test.csv, and then he has provided you some like definition of these variables. That this variable means that the person has survived or not. This is different cases. For example, a particular problem के हिसाब से आया हुआ, but in different problems it will be in different ways. And yes, this definition will has to be provided by you to you so that you actually know what you're working on. That is why I said in the first session that in data scientists, any field, if you have a knowledge of your own field, then is the right chance to jump in this data analysis and you can ace it here because you have to be very strong in your field. Okay. So until now, it's सब कुछ clear है यहाँ तक? Is there any problem? Okay. So let's see. I have explained here as well the entire data set. Now let's jump into the data set. Okay, so you can also read about here Kaggle, and make sure you sign up here if you want to submit your predictions, and you can also study a lot about it. So today, agenda has already been clear to you that today we'll be doing a pre-processing on live dataset, and I'll be walking you through my code and telling you how the code performs. So first thing, I will tell you after this session or in the next coming sessions, I will tell you a definite template which you can follow in any dataset. Obviously, there is going to be difference in how you manipulate data, but there are some predefined steps. For example, in every machine learning problem or a deep learning problem or a data analysis problem, for that case, you will first have to import the libraries. And then you have to load it, then you have to read it, and then you have to clean it, process it, and then you have to make models and predictions. These are some steps which will be followed in every machine learning problem. So similarly, I have just imported standard libraries. For those who don't know, I hope you would have gone through the last lectures. So today we are importing Panda as PD, NumPy as NP. These are all aliases, and matplotlib. So first, let's import the dataset. I have already added this as train.csv, and I am importing it using pd.readcsv. Readcsv, we can similarly have a read XLS, read txt, whatever you want, but this is a CSV file, so I'm reading it with CSV. I will store it in a variable called data. So as you all know now, I will just go through all the functions because we have discussed this very deeply in the last two sessions. So I'll just go it very fast. Jo important hoga, I'll just cover that. All right. So first, data.head. This function just returns first 5 rows of your columns of your data set. For example, you can see 0 to 4. It starts from 0. So you can see how your data set is actually arranged. As a data scientist, you should know that how your data, what you are getting. So you can see a passenger ID, it's in numbers, survive, okay, it's in numbers, P class, you know what P class is right now, name, gender, age, parts, and all that stuff, all right? So now what I first did was I had to find data types of each and every column. So there was the function data.dtypes. It tells me exactly all the features I'm going to deal with along with its type. So passenger ID is int variable, survive is also an int, P class, int, name is an object, you can say it's string object, and similarly sex is an object, age. Yes.
So in the start of your code that you have uploaded on GitHub, there's a pip library imported.
I'll get back to that.
What does that do?
I'll get back to that in a while. Abhi maine Rabi's ko ignore kiya. I'll get back to that point. So I hope you're getting this here. In this function, we are just getting the data type of the variables. And similarly, if you want to know when you will have immense columns, like number of columns, it's very difficult to show in this data.head. So what you can do, you can also inspect the columns by data.columns. So these are passenger ID, survive, P class, name, and all that columns you have. Now, as a data scientist, you have to figure it out which columns has relations with. Okay, now first, before starting the problem, I hope you all know what the agenda was. The goal was of the model is what model we will create eventually, not today, but eventually, to predict whether a passenger survived the Titanic disaster or not. So suppose if I give my all features, my age, my name, and all that stuff, I can predict whether if I was in the Titanic, would I have been survived or not? Obviously, the model is not going to be 100% accurate, but that's what machine learning is. It's not 100% accurate, but it can provide you with a decent accuracy which you can deploy and use it. All right. So the model, this goal should be very clear to you, very clear and crisp to you that we are predicting whether a passenger will survive given their age, class, and a few other features. All right. So after knowing all the columns and all these data types, let's see. Let's explore the columns individually. I've also mentioned here the explanation of each variable here, already explained to you. But if you want me to explain, just let me know. I can do that again as well. So first, let's do the EDA of this data set. Understand the code below. So if I want to check that how many data set, how many people I have, like how many rows I have. So what I did was I make a print statement and check the length of the data. It tells me there are 891 entries. What does that mean? That I have a data set of 891 people. So I will be analyzing and making my data accordingly so that I can predict a model for a new person if I want to predict. Similarly, if I also printed. What are these? These are basically insights I'm gathering. As a data analyst, I'm trying to gain insights. I'm trying to make data, like I'm trying to get insights from the data. So here you can see I have a number of passengers in the training data who survived. How many people who survived? So it's a simple code. I'm just going to go through it. Data is my variable in which all the entire data frame is stored. And if I want to filter it out, what I did was data survive. So what it will do is it will go into the survive column and it will check wherever that column is equals to 1. Let me run this notebook till here so that I can. Give it a sec. In the meantime, if you have any question, you can ask.
Nabeel, I wanted to ask that is it better to have more columns or does it depend on the problem at hand, or is it the case that more columns in any case is not better than less columns?
That's a very good question. Actually, that many people who just jump into this field they don't understand that whether to include more columns, and that's a very valid question, to be honest. So it is you who have to find that which columns are more relevant. As I walk through this notebook, I will make you understand that how I find out that which column is important, which column is not. There's something about intuition as well, something which as a human being, you know that this column is not going to impact at all. So you can also remove that column by your own self. And sometimes you need to know whether it has really some impact on my data. So there's not like fixed thing I can say that more columns are good or less columns are bad. Sometimes you need to have more columns because you cannot, your model is very complex and you need more columns features to make it a good model. And sometimes there is thing can happen that within a few columns you can predict this. We can get mostly same accuracy with thousands of columns. So our goal is to make a simpler model. If we can make a simpler model, by simpler model I mean to use less columns. But there are going to be times when we have to use multiple columns or maybe more columns, thousands of columns, in order to ensure that we get a better accuracy. So it all depends on the problem at hand. Okay. So I have done the code till here. So I just want to show here what this block of code do. So if I type here data survived, it will show me a series. It's a series, and it shows me 0 means not survive, 1 means survive. So yeah. So if I did here a method called value counts, it will tell me how many value counts, how many people have survived and how many haven't. So 549 haven't survived and 342 have survived. It's very clear and cut. So what I'm doing here is I'm asking data go to the data frame which is stored in this variable, and wherever people have survived, return me that number of people. That's it. So 342 people have survived. I could have done this in simpler way, but I want to print it. So there are multiple ways you can do the same code. So I'm just going to show you different ways as well. Similarly, I've also printed here. So you can see I've added here the headings insight 1, insight 2. I wanted to show here that as data scientists, you are bringing insights. You were given, just imagine you were given this raw data. You were given nothing. You were told nothing. You were just given this data and some description that what each column means, because that's you wanted to know. You are not the like you can say expert of that problem. So you were given the data set and you have this entire features meaning, and now you started to explore it, understand it, and make some useful insights for the business problem or the company. So that you can present it in a report that, hey, I find this results. This is what your data is telling me. What you want to do next. You can suggest them that, for example, for the sales problem, you can do this product more sales. You can try to manufacture this product more because this product is getting more people want this product. It's all what data analysts do. Okay. So here I want to figure it out how many women and men survived. Why I did this? Because it will help me to understand, okay, if a person was women on that Titanic, That means people were giving more bias towards women. They were letting women survive, maybe because they wanted to let the generations go on. There's all the assumptions as a data scientist you make. That is what cause, and that is what needs analysis. So, for example, print number of men who survived. So, what the code here is doing is nothing. Again, I have like filtered out data from survive column, and then I have another filter that target those areas, those columns where the sex column is male. So all the males who have survived, tell me the number of like mean bata do, average bata do un people's ka who are males and who survived. So 18.8% of men who survived from the Titanic. Similarly, I could have done, I have just shown here okay, what is this doing. It is returning me 0.18 and I multiply it by 100, so 18.8%. I hope this is very clear because it's not difficult. You just tap into the column and then you filter it out accordingly, and it returns you a number, and I multiply it by 100, so it tells me number of percentage of men who survive. Similarly, I can do it for P class. How many class of tickets there were there? I need to know because I did this so that I know that if people are buying some a particular class ticket, for example, there are different sections in Titanic, upper class, lower class, different cabins. So it will help me to figure it out if person was in a particular section, was it there a more chance that he survived or was there a less chance? We will all analyze this. Okay. So I target this column and that dot value count. Dot value count is the function which returns all the categories, sum of like all the variables, all the categories a particular people belong to. For example, for third class, 491 people were there. First class 216 and second class 184. Similarly, I found out the percentage ratio, how many people survived who belong to the one class, how many people survived who belong to the third class. So you can see 62% of people who belong to the first class survived, and only 24% of people who survive in the third class. So you can draw another analysis and tell your business person that, hey, I got one other insight that 62% of people who were in the first, who belong to the first class, who had the first class ticket were survived. So, and the third class people were not able to survive. So if I was there, if I was in first class, I had the ticket of first class, so there was more 62% chances that I would have survived as well. That's how you analyze the data. Similarly, we have also discussed about the group by function. What I'm doing here is I am just organizing a data frame. By if you are in a P class 1, 0.62% of chance surviving. If you are a P2 class, 0.4%, 0.47%, and if you are in third P class, and then 0.24. So it clearly shows if you are in this class, you have more likely chance to be survived. All right. Now let's see the summary of the entire variables. Data.shape tells you number of rows, 891 rows and 12 columns. And this information will show the entire summary of how many null values you have and how data type you have. So what this does is it prints this data in a tabular format, and it tells me that non-null count. So you can see exactly in each column we have 740 null values. Similarly, in cabin you can see there are only 204 null values. Rest are all null values. And similarly here you can see there are 2 missing values. So now after understanding the data, okay, this is column is doing this. Okay, I get the general idea what this is doing. Now let's jump onto the cleaning part, understanding and pre-processing part. So I see there are some missing values and I have to deal with it before I move on to the model phase, because my model cannot process these null values. If you just pass into the null values, model is most likely to return null as well, because it will be trained. Imagine there's a cat and you're training it in a way that bhai, you're telling that imagine leave cat. Take example of a human being, a person who is born, and if you tell that human being that a ball is a cat, he will learn it that way because you're teaching it wrong way, so it will learn wrong things. Similarly, machine learning is nothing. It's a model and you're training it. If you train it the wrong way, it will learn the wrong thing. So as a data scientist, it's your responsibility to train it in the correct way. Okay. So we have very null values in age column, in cabin and embark. We will deal with each column differently so that you know different ways how to deal with the null values. So first, inspect the cabin column. You can see clearly NaN values because this clearly gives a summary, and now you can also inspect it separately as well. Data, and then you pass a string of cabin, this column name, and you can see null values all in here. Okay. So now let's jump to the data pre-processing part. So any guesses what should we do about the age column? How can we deal with this age column? I want to know what you think right now we can do with this column. You can drop on the chat.
we can impute the values.
All right, you have used a good word, impute, but I will just hold it for now. Any other thing you want to say me, like you can suggest what we can do for the age column? No ideas? All right, that's fine. So you can see if I inspect the age column here, data, age. So okay, there are. If I just do it value counts, it will not fit everything because people will have multiple ages. But let's try. You can see dot 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 dot. Matlab, there are people who are 55.5, 24, 30 people who are young aged. 24, 30. You can see you can count it 30, 27. These are all the age we have, and you can also see 0.4 to, I don't know. Maybe this is an outlier. We have to detect it later on. So those values which are none, what do you think is the best estimate? How can I? There are many options. The simplest way is to remove those rows. Will that be a good idea? Let me tell you how many null values are there. You must all be aware of this function is NA. So there are 177 null values. So yeah. So imagine if I drop those 177 rows. Will that be a good approach? Well, it can be. I'm not saying wrong, but as a data scientist, imagine you have very less data. In this case, we just have 900 columns, which is very less in a real life. Okay, we are dealing with big data now. So it is very, we have just 900 columns and we're dropping 177 rows. Okay, I'm just telling you my thought process, how I think. So I think, okay, if I drop these 177 rows, meaning I will be losing a lot of quality data as well. All right, there is no age, but there will be some variations about other data which I might lose. Is there any other way I can solve this problem? Oh yes, there is another way. What I can do is, I just saw here, majority of the people belong to this group age. All right. So what I can do is take an average age. What I did was I take all the average, I sum it and multiply by total number of people. So I will replace every null value where the people haven't provided their age with an average value, that average aged people I have on this Titanic. This way, I don't have to drop the entire rows and lose the entire data set, and thereby decreasing my data size and data like features to nahi, but data size. So I did was I just replaced it with average value. Before that, let's meet them. Okay, I think I've done first male wala part, but okay, I'll jump to that part first. So here, you can see that I first found a sum. So age has 177 missing values. In order to fill those values, I created a second data frame, df2. You can first create a copy of it. Like it's very simple. df2 equals to data.copy. This is important so that the original data set will also be safe, and now the entire copy of it will also be available in this variable. Okay. So what I did was I targeted this column and said wherever you find the missing value in this column, fill it with the mean of the entire column. Are you getting it? So what it does is it goes into this column and then find all the variables, all the values which are not null. It averages it, and wherever there is null, it replaces it with the average value. So if you want to find the average of the age column, it's very simple. 26.69. You can always, if you want to convert into int variable, you can typecast it like this. 29. So 29 is an average age who was out there on Titanic. So we are replacing that in our data set. All right. If we check again, then you can see that age column has no more missing values. All right. So I hope till here it is very clear, because it's a very important thing. You must have to deal with different ways every time. This is one of the way I used for this data set. Is it clear?
Sir, we took the average of the whole data set.
No.
Like 29 was the average for the whole data set.
Data set, we took the average as entire data set, but for that particular column, because obviously we want to find the average of age, na?
नहीं मतलब एज में जो है पूरे 900 डेटा सेट थे ना, 900 लोगों का
बिल्कुल 900 लोगों में से we have 170 missing. तो जो missing नहीं थे उनका एवरेज हुआ. Getting?
सर अगर मल्टीपल कॉलम में एन हो फिर क्या करें सर?
Multiple columns, can you like explain it more?
मल्टीपल कॉलम्स में सर एन हो उसको रिमूव कैसे करें या fill in कैसे करें?
We deal every column in a different way. I am like I have shown here that we have different columns. Age has null values. You can see cabin has also null values. In embark, we will deal different columns in different ways. Until now, I just deal with the age column. अभी तक सिर्फ हमने age column को tackle किया. Now we will tackle this cabin column and this embark column as well. All right.
सर हर कॉलम को अलग-अलग करना होगा समान.
That is obviously that is the thing, because age, you cannot replace cabin with average because cabin has different values. Embark has different values. What will I do if I replace these values with an average of an age value? So you have to deal every column differently.
Okay, sir.
Right. So there was a column here. I skip it further. Let me show that column. Here we have a column here: gender, male and female. Do you think our data will be able, a machine learning model which will create in future will be able to predict? Let me first print that column. Enter. Okay, sex. So we have male, female, this type of values are there. Do you think if you pass these values to the models, will it be able to understand it? Because model is what? It's nothing but an algorithm with mathematics and calculus involved. It will not go into deep, but it can't understand it, right? So you have to make it in a machine learning friendly way. So what you will do is, it's very simple. These are categorical variables. What do you say? These are categorical variables. These are basically categories, no? That male, female, other, all right? So what we can do is we can encode it. The best way to tackle these variables is to encode it. Since we have only two categories available here, we will encode it in 1 and 0 form. For example, I can say male is 1 and female is 0, encoding it, all right? Encoding these variables. So what I did was I chose, you can choose anything. I chose, I think, male for 0. Let me check. If x is equals to male, 1 for male. So I choose here, if there is male, then encode it with 1. If female, encode it with 0. As simple as that. All right? If male, encode it with 1. If female, encode it with 0. So there is a simple, you can see if else function. If I just run over this entire column, and if I see if this column, if this cell is equals to male, then encode it with 1. There was a question asked in few sessions back about lambda function, so I have used it here as well. सबसे पहले we have made a copy already. Copy बनाई थी here मैंने, and then in this copy data frame, I'm targeting this column, sex column, and then what I'm doing is applying on the original data frame. Apply क्या करता है? Apply will just go to the particular column you want to apply. I'm applying this on this column, on this sex column. It will go into the entire column, and this is the function. The function says if x equals to male, that means if a particular, it will go in every cell one by one. It will see that it is male, okay, then it will replace it with 1. If it is 0, else 0. Otherwise, if there is no male, we have only two variables, male or female, right? So if it is a male, it will replace it with 1. If not male, it will replace it with 0. So let me run this. Now you can see it is changed with 0 and 1 and 0s. 1 is a male and 0 is a female. So you can see that we have more males on the Titanic ship and few females as well. So yeah, this is another insight you can get from this piece of code. So yeah, okay, there is understanding of lambda function. For those who want to understand it, you can always go through this notebook. It's very simple. I can just go through it in 2-3 minutes.
जो जेंडर को इनकोड किया है, तो 0 and 1 values will be treated as categories or new numbers. Like
that's a good question. It will be treated as categories only, but now it is interpretable. The machine learning model will interpret as 1s and 0s, but we know on the data analysis that this 1 means male and the 0 means female. These are categorical. That is why you say categorical encoding only. आगे चल के we will also study about one-hot encoding and other stuff. But this is a simple encoding which we can do without importing any library. So let me explain this function, lambda function. Lambda is a keyword in Python, and then just ignore this. First, let's understand this. It's very simple. So if I want to make a function, proper function, I can define a function. If x equals to male, return 1, else return 0. So in this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines of code can be just done in one line. What I did was I set a variable x lambda keyword and then variable x colon. Now whatever the result of this will be there in stored one by one in this variable, and it will be applied cell by cell in the entire data frame. So if the first cell has female, it will check if x equals to male, true. It will assign 1 to it, x. It will move on to the next cell. If x equals to male, let's suppose it's false, so it will assign 0 to it, and then it will move to the next cell, right? So that is how it is done. There is also a video link here, you can also check that out. So we have already talked about the missing values, which was supposed to come later, but I talked it further. So we have talked about this, and we have handled this age missing values. So suppose before I move on to this, I wanted to tell one more thing, another insight. So in this, it is not related to this data set, but I'm telling you generally. Suppose we would have missing values in gender column. What would we do? How can we treat this? Any suggestions? Up till now, जो हमने पढ़ा है, like regarding whatever I have told right now, there is any suggestion you want to add? Anyone? Okay, so let me tell.
We can find out the name. We can find out the name.
I cannot hear you, sorry, but I hope you know. Maybe you can check what I'm telling you right now. So there can be many ways in this as well. We can replace it with mode variable. We already know there were more males. So it is very like you can say, okay, if there is more males, it's most likely that the person who has an added gender might be a male. You can say that as a data scientist. And there can be another thing. Maybe you can add another category. For example, you can make your own category other. Well, this is something advanced and you can really do. It's not a very difficult thing, to be honest. What you have to do is, similarly, I will show you if there were, in this data set, we don't have any missing values in sex column, right? But if there was, you can go to this fill NA function, call this function, and instead of passing the mean, you can just say in other, just like that. So it will fill all those columns with other, and after encoding, after doing this, then we can import. मतलब पहले missing values को fill किया, and then we will encode it. So when we encode it, now we'll have 3 categories. So 1 for male, 0 for female, and maybe 2 for others. That is how interesting data science is. So you need to find different ways to tackle different problems. There's not always going to be a single approach that I can tell you, okay, always you have to do this. No, you have to try out different things. It's a very intuitive, it's not a very intuitive, you have to try different things. Trial and error se karna padega, right? And see what case suit in your problem. So after handling this, after I handle the missing values, and let's check about what is this embark column. So if I do a value count function, I can see there are 3 categories, S, C, Q. So if you are wondering what is embark, let's go to this data set and see what they have described here. So embark is nothing but a port of embarkation. I think it's a port where they used to embark yourself, Cherbourg, Queenstown, and Southampton. So these are the encoded values they have shown in the description of the data set. Okay. So okay, I know that many of the ports were embarked on this Southampton. There were a few on Cherbourg and then Queenstown. Okay. This is what I know about right now. Okay. But there are some missing values. So how many were the missing values? There were only 2 missing values. In this case, I could have replaced it with mode variables. Like I could have replaced it with, I can assume that since most of the embarking was done on this Southampton, maybe the other 2 which were not filled or for any reason, there were also Southampton. But I want to show a different technique. So what I did was here I removed it because there were only 2 rows and I don't think it will have a major impact. It might have as well, but I'm assuming that it might not have an impact. So I just drop those columns. And there's a simple function, drop NA. Drop NA will drop all the null values you have in that column. So I just drop it and it is stored in the variable in order to analyze it, which columns I'm dropping. So I'm dropping these 2 columns with passenger ID 62 and 830. And these people have survived. And these are their names and their ages. You can check it that. You can also have a analysis of what people you are dropping. So that if in case you want to add in the future analysis, you can also add that I drop these columns based on this feature because it was missing. But how about if I try and add this again and see what my model is doing? Okay. So these were the 2 people I dropped. After this, Um, okay, there's another approach I've added here. You can also fill it with mode variables, like just I told you, okay, mode se add kar do usko. But I haven't done that here. After I done that, I saw that there's one column still left, which has 687 missing values. 687 missing values, right? So I just inspected what kind of values I have in this column. Now, the cabin number is like a string E101, F33, E44. So I assume that what help by this column might have. Being not an expert in this problem, because this is a different problem, you can't be an expert in every problem at hand, but you as a data scientist, you might have to research something. So I found that, okay, I don't find any connection, any linkage, any correlation with any of these variables. So I will just drop it later. But how I drop it, let me show you first the visualizations. You have already studied about this correlation matrix, all right? So here I printed a matrix of correlation between all the variables we have right now. So you can see the diagonals will definitely be 1 because correlation with itself is 1. So you have to define a threshold first, that from where to where you want कि भाई इतना आपका correlation होनी चाहिए. So I found maybe 0.7 in this case, but I didn't found any variables having strong correlation with each other. Why it is important to identify correlation? Let me explain you this first. Suppose karo, if you want to predict, I want to predict your age. Let's now predict your age, and I ask in the data set, I want to predict your age. Okay. And in the data set I've collected, I have 2 columns. Suppose height and weight. Okay. So it's very clear. You can see here that if I have your height and weight are very correlated. Matlab, if your height increases, your weight also increases. So if I'm able to predict, how about if I am able to predict with just one variable? Will that be better, or using these 2 variables are better? Well, definitely if I can predict, if I can get the same accuracy with one variable, then using 2 variables is costly because there are competitions running behind of the back of the scene which you don't know. So it's better to have a simpler model. So if I use height and weight to predict your age, for instance, I'm saying I don't know if I can do that or not. So if I'm doing that, and if I find that these 2 are very strongly correlated, because one increases as height increases, your weight also increases. Directly positive correlation has come. So I can just omit one column and I can just use one of the columns, maybe height or maybe weight, depending on my business case. All right. So that is what correlation is about. So here now let's see the visualizations. Visualizations are very important. When you're presenting your analysis to a business person who is not a very technical person, you have to plot it in a way that it is understandable to them. How many of you have heard about Power BI and Tableau? All right. Nobody has heard. So Power BI and Tableau are basically tools which are not coding based, don't worry, which allows us to create these visualization dashboards, which I want to create, for example, bar plot, histograms, pie chart, in a very intuitive manner and very understandable for the business analyst person who doesn't know anything about coding, all right? I'm assuming everyone here is who knows familiarity with coding. So I create a function here, bar plot. You can do it simply by plt.barplot, but it's better to have function if you're going to reuse again and again. So what I did was I will give it a variable. A variable, by variable I means I will provide here a column name. And then what it will do is first the value of the column, the entire column will be stored in this variable. And then I will count how many values, like value counts will tell. If it's a categorical variable, it will tell, for example, embark. Suppose it's an embark column. Suppose it's a sex column, okay? So all the gender values will be saved in this bar variable, and then the value counts will return the value of a particular gender. For example, how many males are there, how many females are there. And then I plot a figure, 9 by 3, 9 rows, matlab to have a figure, 9 rows and 3 columns, and then a bar plot. The bar plot with this var value dot index, and I've defined color orange. Let me run this. You can see I have first made a list of categories because I know that my data set में कौन-कौन से categorical variables है. How will I know this? Let me print that again instead of going upwards. Okay, so df2 dot, if I do it the d types. So you can see these are integer variables and these are object. object. Embark, you know already, it's a categorical variable. Cabin, categorical tha. Ticket is a categorical for now, and name. So, and there are all SIB, SP. These are also something categorical, I think. You need to check here. Yes, number of siblings. These are numbers basically, na? So let's see how I've done here. So category I've defined a list: survive, sex, P class, embark, save, FCA, FP, and parts. And then I've taken a for loop, for C in category. It will traverse the entire list one by one, and then call this function, bar plot function. And every time it will have a different value. First, it will have survive, bar plot of survive. So you can see I've already shown you the stats in the very badly formatted way, numbers, and now you can see in the visualization format. If this way you present to your business analyst, they will understand, okay, 500 plus people have not survived, and these are the people who have survived. It's very clear to them by just looking at this visualization. That is why it's very important to know as a data scientist how to make good dashboards as well. Similarly, here you can see how many females and males are there. The ratio of it's very easily visible. Number of tickets of P class, 1 class, 2nd class, and 3rd class. And then embarked. There are Southampton. We already had studied that 500 people, 500, more than 500 were Southampton port which are used water, and then C, and then Queenstown. Similarly, number of siblings category में इसको भी divide कर सकते हैं, because people who don't have any siblings were majority people don't have siblings. You can just see clearly from here, and there are people who have one sibling. 200, about 200 people have one sibling, and very few people have two siblings, and so on and so forth. And there is an outlier. You can see there's a person who has 8 siblings, but there was a family, a person who has 8 siblings on that Titanic ship as well. That's very good, useful info. Similarly, parts, I forgot what part was. Number of parents and children aboard the Titanic. So you can see there were about more than 600 people who have no parents, and about 150 people who have single parent, and similarly so on and so forth. Now let's see visualize the numeric variables. Fare is a numeric variable, age is a numeric variable, passenger ID is a numeric variable, and I will reduce one important insight after this. Again, I make a function. The function is very similar. Don't get exhausted with what code is doing. The code is all available, and you can always Google it out, use Stack Overflow. Code is not a problem for you guys. Understanding how to analyze, how to go about a particular problem if you're given a data set, that's very important. Other question. All right. So there are some numerical variables. Once again, I've done a for loop for n in numeric var plot histogram. So here you can see it tells me that 700 people who have given fare between 0 to 100, more than 700 people, you can say. If they have given this much fare, you can see this distribution of fare distribution. Actually, there was a difference. In a bar plot, you can see there is a space between two categories. Whereas in a histogram, you see a continuous thing. There's no space. So that is how we differentiate between a bar plot and histogram. For those who don't know about stats, I was just telling for them. Similarly, for the age, you can see it forms a normal distribution curve. I'm not going into what is normal distribution because that is out of the scope of this workshops. But for those who know about stats, they do understand what I'm talking about. So you can see majority of the people lie in here in this region, 20 to 40 age people were there on those Titanic ship. But how about this? What is this? Oh, passenger ID, we have a complete fulfilled rectangle. So this can be concluded if as a data analysis think about it, you are providing a model with passenger ID. Let me first inspect what is passenger ID. Column, DF2, and what is passenger ID column name? Okay, DF2. I think I've already dropped it. Let me check. Okay, so we have this 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Imagine what will be the use if I am providing my model this 1, 2, 3 for every member. It will be automatic. It's almost like automatic increment, auto increment. For every person who buys a ticket and who goes aboard on the Titanic ship, I'm giving a number assigned to it. Will that have any importance on predicting whether a person will survive or not? Well, I think no, it's of no use, because this is a random number. It has no correlation with anything. So I can very safely remove this column, and I will have one less column to care about. All right. So once someone was asking in the start, okay, how will I know? That is how you know. Your personal intuition is also very important as a data scientist. You will all just not depend on what data is telling, but if you have some people who are knowledgeable about that particular field, you're going to consult them as well. You are going to have them aboard with you, so that they can tell you, okay, if this is happening, this might be the case, because they are the very experienced field of working in that field, and you are a data scientist, and you will tell them that this is the insight. Now tell me, is there something very interesting happening or not? Because they are the person, or they're experts in that field, and they'll tell you, oh no, this field is not important because it's a random number we are sending to everyone who was there in the Titanic ship. So I can safely remove this field. So one column is gone, just like that. Okay. That is why the illustration. Let me comment it. Okay, there was a problem because let's comment it. So okay, now there is also I've also shown the correlation metrics already, but there's a very interesting way you can also display the correlation. No? So we all know, somebody asked me about the Seaborn library, right? So by default there was I don't have Seaborn library, so I have to install it. For those who don't know how to install a library in Python, it's very simple. You can install it from command shell or from, or you can install it from Jupyter Notebook interactive shell as well. Just place under exclamation mark pip. Pip is it's a package manager. I think it like a keyword you will always place it before installing any library. Pip install is a keyword as well, and here you will type your library name, what you want to install. In my case, I want to install Seaborn, so pip install Seaborn. It will install, and once it's installed, restart your notebook and then import it, and that's it. For those who still forgot what C1 was, C1 is nothing but built over matplotlib, which provides much better like visualization. It provides a more fancy way of visualization, and it's more appealing to eyes. So that's why we use it. So let me go back to where I was. Okay, so we were studying about the correlation metrics. I've already shown you, but I used this time heat map. I have used matplotlib only, but in a function. I've used matplotlib only, but in a function. You can see here, this is matplotlib only. plt.figure, plt.bar. But instead of just like not making a function and just doing it like in code in a messy way, I've made a function, because I would be using same code again repeatedly. There was a use of function we studied. A function is made when you want to repeat your task again and again. So here I want to plot bar plot again and again. I just make it a function. I pass it a variable, and then I just simply plot all the repeated code once and for all. And every time I want to plot a bar plot, I just call it with a different variable. As simple as that. Okay. So here, we were here. So this is a heat map function in the Seaborn library. Here we are using a heat map function, and I'm defining here for what heat map I had to create. So df2 is my data frame, which I have clean data set right now. Dot correlation. Core provides a correlation matrix, so it will use as the data to create a heat map. And not, if I doesn't do a not is equals to true, what will happen? So I don't have now those correlation values. So in order to understand what's happening, so I just a not is equal to true. So now I have the correlation that obviously the diagonals will be 1 again. The values won't change, but it's a good view on the business analysis. Oh, they can see. They can also have this color bar here. Okay, the lighter ones mean stronger positive relation, and the darker ones mean negative correlation. So they can understand it, and they can also understand what is going on in here if they have a good decent idea about correlation. All right. So after doing till here, I just cleaned the age column. I just cleaned survive column. No, I just cleaned embarked, and now I'm removing all the irrelevant columns. Irrelevant columns, this is not irrelevant. I'll tell you why I removed this. I removed P class because again it was a classes, the defined base first class, second class, third class. I don't think that's a usage here, although I can include. Sorry, I'm including these variables. I'm not including. I just include these variables: survive, P class, sex, age, SIPs, SP, part, and fair. And the variables which I not included were me do. This is my final data frame, which I will eventually train to my model. So I just have now survive, P class, sex, age, ship, CAPM, parts, and fair. And previously I had some other columns like cabin. I removed it because I don't find any use of that column. Similarly, I removed passenger ID because there was no usage of that column as well. So now I have this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 variables. I have 7 variables. But out of these 7, what is my predictor variable? Predictor variable is a variable which I'm going to predict. So this one was my predictor variable. I'm going to predict a person has survived or not based on these variables. So for those who are finding it confusing, it's a very simple like function. Agar if there is a function y equals to x plus z, I'm saying you y is my predictor variable and x plus z are my input variables. If I tell you okay, x is my age and I have, let's say, all the variables will be here. I'm giving a very intuitive, high level layman example. Okay, suppose all were like numerical variables and I'm all adding it up to get my survive variable. It's not the case here, but I'm just telling you how do we do that. So it's a predictor variable. We will separate it out, and all these are independent variables. Independent, which are not dependent on anything. While survive is dependent on these variables. Survive, we have to find if a person is a male. If a person is 24, will he survive? So this variable is dependent on these variables. And that is what is called a supervised learning approach and supervised learning technique. Supervised learning technique kya hoti hai? It's simple. When you will provide a data, I'm going to train a model eventually, which I will provide. If a person is 22 years age, he's a male, he has this class of age, he has this part, he has this fee, so he will not survive. So my model is going to learn, just like you train a small child when he is born. Similarly, I'm training my model like a child. If a person is this age, okay, this will survive. So it will create some complex model behind it, which you don't need to know what it's doing because you will just be using scikit-learn library for this bootcamp. Although I will highly encourage after this bootcamp, we go into those details and understand the working and how those algorithms are working. All right. So that is how you train a model. So we have cleaned the data set entire, and we have found now it is the data set is ready to feed to the model, which inshallah hopefully will cover it, how different models works in the coming sessions. There are models like decision tree, random forest, gradient boosting, and at some advanced thing as well, like binary classifier. We'll all study naive Bayes and everything. But now we have the data. A data analysis, our first job, which I talk about here, was we have understand the objective. Business objective is very clear, and we also understand data requirement. Data collection was already given to us. We understand how to export data and prepare the data. Now we will run into this phase, modeling. And you can see this arrow here, meaning once I model it, that doesn't mean I'm done. No, it's just the start, it's the base model. Maybe I will not get the accuracy. Maybe I'll get 70% accuracy and I want more. Now I will go back again. I will see, okay, I have excluded this column. How about I include this column and see what's the result? I don't know. We don't know what will happen. We have to find it out. We will just experiment different things. And that is what we will study in this modeling part. And then we'll study about the evaluation. Once we have the data set, once we model it, once we predict it, how we can evaluate? How will we know that my model is performing better or my model is performing worse? What are the evaluation criteria? This is very important. So we will study that as well. But once we're done after a modeling section. So until here is any question you want to ask, anything you want to understand regarding to data processing, I am there to answer you. Any question? Sure, I'll provide these PPT slides as well. Anything else? Nobody have any question? Great. Okay, so now you have this data set ready. I will highly encourage you to go onto this Kaggle website and find some data set. Maybe I can share the link of one data set and you can find insights. Your objective will be to find some few insights out of those data sets. Having that raw data set, and you can just visualize it and find some beautiful insights. For example, this is happening. A metropolitan data set. I will share the link in Discord channel. and then you can analyze.
Say the website from where we were getting our data set. Can you
Kaggle.
tell a brief out about it?
Okay, so Kaggle is a platform where people host their data sets and competitions. Companies here host their competition, and they want data scientists to to make a model out of those data sets for their predictions. You can go home here and you can find many different things happening. Okay, let's go here and see what people are posting here. So you can see currently there are competition, and you will also get paid. The bigger thing, you can see the prize money here. So if you are hacking the kidney, it's a problem name. It will probably have a data set around the medical data set. You can see it will provide, you have this data set particular. It will provide you the structure and features, kis tarike data set and what you want to do. And these are the files you will be provided with. Okay, you cannot solve this problem because this is an advanced problem, but I'm just telling you there will be a simpler problem as well. All right. So similarly, you can find other. Basically, Kaggle is a place where people host their data, and people are encouraged to participate in those competitions, and people participated. And based on there's a particular time period which you can submit your predictions. And once you do that, and there will be a ranking, and those who are the top 3, they get the prizes, and that's it about it. You can work on many data sets here. Simpler one, you can just start on with a simpler structured tabular data set, not with images, vagera, because that will be very advanced right now. But you can start working and analyze it. So is that clear?
Yes, sir. Thanks a lot.
Okay. So if nobody has any questions, so thank you so much for joining this session and tuning in. I hope you have enjoyed this notebook. All the notebook sessions are available here. You can just go on to the link you were provided before. Everything is available here, train file and this data preprocessing file. Soon we will dive more. This is not done. The data preprocessing is I just touch upon few things. There are more things to do. For example, outlier detection, handling class and balance problem. I haven't told you how to handle that. So hopefully I will cover that in upcoming sessions. I will find another data set regarding fraudulent transactions, because that's a very famous problem in regards to that. Those who are part of banks and financial sector, they will know how to handle that problem and how they can implement in their banks, etc. So we will hopefully cover that as well. That's a very important thing. Outlier detection, we'll talk about that as well. And there are some other techniques we'll learn how to impute the variables. Somebody used the word impute. Impute means how to change what you should do to handle those missing values. We have just seen now few ways of handling missing values. There are more, which we're going to explore later. Okay, so that's it from the session. Thank you so much. See you hopefully on Monday with a new task.
Thank you.
Allah Hafiz.
Allah.